Welcome to X-Rated
Season 4!
Oh my god!
Season 5.
Lordy, look who's 41.
Season 5.
It is Season 5. Which is confusing, because it's episode 41.
Right. Season 5 opener.
Yeah.
We got a crowd pleaser.
Yeah, we do.
Save that for later, though.
We'll get there.
We were on the break when this happened, but Toby Hooper died last week.
That's right.
And since we were on break, we didn't get a chance to mention it.
Mm-hmm.
Another horror great, we lost George Romero earlier this year.
They're just dropping like flies.
And we lost Toby Hooper, best known for the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and or Poltergeist, depending on, what you grew up watching.
Let's throw Life Force in there, too, just because...
You and I have differing opinions on Life Force. I know that you're like space vampires with Patrick Stewart. Like, I'm sold.
I'm in. What? God. You had me at space.
Toby Hooper. So, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You're not going to hear me badmouth that movie. Mm-hmm. That is, like, the most unforgiving horror film. Unforgiving in so much that it doesn't, like, completely go off the rails.
Yeah. Like,
there's definitely... And we've both seen horror movies that build and get so crazy that they're just suddenly we don't believe them or we're not into it anymore. Texas Chainsaw like gets to that like crazy level, but you're still in it.
You're just stuck there.
Like you're just right in the journey with them.
It's a hard watch.
And there's also like very little blood. Like the chick gets like her finger cut near the end, and the dude like cuts his hand in the car in the beginning, and like that's really it in the ways of blood in that movie. So it's not gory really by any means, but it's still just a difficult movie.
Psychologically, it's a real mindfuck.
And then, A, I don't really even like Poltergeist, but B, I don't think he directed it.
Yeah.
There's a dispute as to who directed it, him or Steven Spielberg. Steven Spielberg was directing E.T. at the time.
Across the street.
And was contractually obligated not to direct another movie while making E.T. And, yeah, I don't know. There's something about Poltergeist, it seems too much like a Spielberg movie and not enough like a Toby Hooper movie. Because he made, like, Life Force, a year or two after that. And it feels like he just was trying to rip off what Spielberg did in Poltergeist and put that, like, style of visual into Life Force, but just didn't have the pizzazz.
Yeah.
So
Life Force isn't a good movie. I don't want to sound like I'm a fan of the movie. I just think it's worth a watch. Yeah,
other than Texas Chainsaw, I can't name a Toby Hooper film that I would be particularly proud of.
Yeah.
Even the films that have moments, they're few and far between. Like Funhouse, did you ever see that one?
I didn't, no.
It's like a murderer is let loose in a carnival that like some kids are trapped in overnight. And it's like the first half is so boring. So boring. And then it kicks up during the second half. I'm like, okay, we got a real movie going on now, but it was so boring that I'd forgotten that I watched it.
Yeah.
And like I saw it when I was like 20, and then I watched it again when I was 27, and I didn't realize that I'd seen it again until that halfway mark, and I was like, oh god, like that first half is so boring, like I don't even remember being bored by it.
You just checked out immediately.
Yeah.
Oh man. I went to the fair this weekend.
Oh yeah?
The Puyallup.
Aren't they changing it to be like the...
Yeah, I think it's the Washington State Fair now.
Yeah.
It's, in my mind, it will always be the Puyallup. It was nice. I had a great time. I got to try a scone for the first time there.
You've never had a scone?
Never had a fair scone. I've only been twice, but...
Well, what's the difference between a scone and a fair scone?
Well, I don't know, but those fair scones, they're like hot and buttered and jammy.
That's a scone.
Yeah, but it was delicious. I don't know. It's fair food. It's like a fair thing.
Did you get an elephant ear?
I didn't.
Because they always smell good, but I swear to God, you can't have more than 3 bites of an elephant ear.
No, God. And the plates of curly fries I saw people walking around with.
Enough to feed a family.
Yeah, it like probably weighed as much as my head. Like, jeez.
Yeah.
But that's part of it. It's fun.
It almost seems like food that you buy at a fair. It's like they're selling it on the condition that you're going to throw it up.
Yeah.
Like, you can't chow down too much. Like, you can't make a meal out of fair food.
No.
But it's like, here, have some cotton candy and some sweet bread covered with sugar and, candy and caramel, and then get on the teacups.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to throw up. I'm just kidding.
So... What did you watch?
I watched a Tobe Hooper movie.
Okay.
Called Jinn. Djinn.
Oh, okay.
It wasn't very good. It was like all jump scares. There was a couple like good gore parts, but I figured, Tobe Hooper just died. You gotta at least try to see something else by him. I wanted to see Spontaneous Combustion because it has Brad Dourif in it.
Oh, we love Brad Dourif.
We do love Brad Dourif. It's sort of hard to come by. Like, I found some crappy versions on YouTube, but I want to see it the way that it's supposed to be seen.
Yeah.
My local video rental store, it was checked out. So I gotta wait for another week for that one.
Unsurprising, since
T-Hoop just died.
Yeah. T-Hoops.
What about you?
I have been watching Glow.
Oh, yeah. The Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling.
Gorgeous Ladies of Wrestling TV show on the Netflix. And I love it.
Yeah.
I'm really into it.
I watched the whole thing in one evening.
It's very bingeable in that way.
Yeah.
It's the same people who did Orange is the New Black and Weeds, which has me nervous.
Yeah, I know, because Weeds, jumped the shark at like minute 40?
Great premises. I feel like that's, at least with those last two shows, that's kind of all they got, and then it really dives off, hits a cliff. So I'm a little nervous that that's what's going to happen with this show too, but man, that first season is so good. It's just mwah.
Oh, you know what I watched?
What?
I finished Twin Peaks, the new series, yesterday, because they did the last two episodes as one thing yesterday. And while I can't say with any certainty, I feel strongly that there is going to be another season.
Nice.
David Lynch isn't known for really wrapping everything up in a nice, neat little bow. I was already behind. There was a lot in this new season that just felt like nothing. I'm going to say between episodes 3 and 12, there was one episode that I think really demanded my attention.
That was the one that blew everybody's minds, right?
Yes.
Okay.
The Gotta Light episode. And all the other ones, I was like, this is a lot of David Lynch humor. And it really felt like it wasn't going anywhere. And then in episode 14 or 15, we finally get Dale Cooper back. And the penultimate episode, it really feels like things are wrapping up. But then it goes on for one more episode. And it's that whole episode just existed to create more questions.
Oh, yeah.
And the way that it ended, I'm like, okay, not a finale. This is a beginning to something. So
what you're saying is episode 17 was the screen saying the end, and then episode 18 is question mark?
Basically, pretty much. Yes.
We are X-Rated, and we're here to talk about Scott Pilgrim versus the World. 1, 2, 3, 4. Directed by Edgar Wright, 2010.
So I took very few notes, and it wasn't because I was being lazy, but it was because as I was taking notes, I realized I was just writing down the movie. This was just notes to, dictate the movie to, a blind person.
Yeah. How kind of you.
Yeah. I mean, it starts out, you have the Universal logo with, the 8-bit soundtrack.
Yeah, so, you can't... This movie is, made for me, it feels like. It's just, it's got, scrappy bands, it's got 8-bit Nintendo references, it's colorful, it's intense pacing, sometimes fast cuts, it's man, sign me up.
It's, we'll get to this later, but it's funny, definitely.
Yeah.
It's also kind of sweet and romantic. It's also sort of complex in its display of romance.
Sure.
But by the end, even though I know how the finale plays out, I still kind of get goosebumps when I mean, spoiler alert, when Scott's like, no, I'm doing this for me.
Scott earned the power of self-respect.
Speaking of Goosebumps, this movie gives it to me several times. Like, there's two specific scenes where I really feel it. And one is the fucking opening title sequence. Like, it starts off, nice and kind of quiet. It does the 8-bit Universal logo, and then it, comes in. It's like, just starts off, Scott Pilgrim is dating a teenager.
Yeah.
And then, like, they're just kind of, it's all really quiet, talking, and then they go to band practice. And then it just gets all, like, cut off.
We are Sex Bomb! 1, 2, 3, 4!
And then that long pan back. And then it just does all that crazy on-film animation during the title sequences. It's just like, if you're not on board in those 5 minutes, like, leave the theater. This is what the movie is.
So I saw this movie in theaters, and I actively remember it being, like, some of the most fun I've had in a movie theater.
Yeah.
A lot of it was because everyone in the theater were just, like, comic book nerds and video game nerds, and they were all just there to sort of revel in a movie that kind of just celebrated, like, all sorts of different facets of nerddom.
Yeah.
Like, or all sorts of, like, geekiness, I guess, with music and video games and movies, like, all just sort of wrapped into,
and
like, one
manga,
package.
I guess.
Sure, yeah. And everyone in the theater had a blast.
Yeah.
Everyone was just laughing at all the stuff. Just absolute good time, start to finish. And then I found out, like, later that this movie financially was a bomb.
I was going to say, how many people were there in the theater?
Like, it wasn't sold out, but it was, like, a crowded theater.
Okay. Because I saw it also in the theater, and it was maybe, like, 2 weeks after it had come out.
Okay.
And it was me and maybe 6 other people at Cinerama.
Oh, God.
It was sad. And I couldn't believe it. Like, when it was over, I was thinking, like, why isn't everybody super excited about this movie? So, yeah, I think it was a financial flop.
Yeah, I think so, too.
Which is such a shame. Because I think it's maybe my favorite Edgar Wright movie. Like, looking back, I think history's going to be kind to this movie eventually.
It'll prove it right.
Yeah. Like, it's just such a shame that nobody watched it when it came out.
Well, also because at the time I was managing independent music store, and we had, like, Blu-rays and stuff. We couldn't keep this Blu-ray in stock.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I guess, if you're shopping in an independent music store for your Blu-rays, you probably have, a moral opposition to Best Buy and things like that.
Yeah.
So, you're already not shopping there.
Yeah.
But just both the movie and the soundtrack sold really well.
Yeah.
So that's, like, what also, like, reinforces my confusion as to this not being a financial success. Because it seems like people loved it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know if it's the way they marketed it or if, like, they didn't know how to package it or what. But, and it's hard for me to be critical of this movie, like, look at it with an objective viewpoint, because I am so into, like, everything across the board. And this movie really speaks to me as someone who's been in several failed music projects in my 20s. And, was really into 8-bit music, too. So, like...
Yeah, I feel like fans of 8-bit music, like, there's a specific generation. Like, you had to have grown up playing, like, NES.
Yeah.
Because, like, I love it, and I sort of appreciate, like, the inventiveness. Like, they had just a set criteria that they could work inside, and they had to do the most with that. And especially, like, as I grow older and I realize that, like, these people are, like, were big fans of Debussy and things like that, and how they, like, tried to put that into the format.
Totally, yeah.
And then you can hear it, like, once you make that connection, you're like, oh no, these people were, like, musical geniuses. They just could only work on this small
4
set.
channels, 2 saw waves, 1 square wave, and a triangle wave. It's like, good luck. Pretty impressive.
Yeah, they did a lot with very little.
Yeah.
I mean, they definitely, like, 8-bit music definitely lives up to the less is more nomenclature.
Absolutely. And then, it kind of, like, translates into Sex Bomb, their band, too, being, like, a 3-piece, drums, bass, guitar,
garage
vocals.
rock.
Yeah. But still fucking jamming. I don't like all of their songs, but there's a couple that I think are really hot.
They have that sort of chunky guitar rhythm that I think all garage fans want, but don't necessarily achieve. But, I mean, I know that, like, Beck and, like, notable songwriters...
Beck wrote the songs. Nigel Godrich produced them, so it's sort of like, it's gonna sound good, but yeah, that first one just like still like sets you, gets you there, and ready to go. I get goosebumps every time. I get goosebumps thinking about it.
I was never in a band, but I did live with a band for a number of years.
Okay.
So like I was around for like rehearsals and went to live shows and things like that. And this really kind of captures that band dynamic. Like,
you were like young Neil?
Yeah.
You lived in the house but weren't in the band? I always compare it to being in a marriage or being in a relationship.
Okay.
Because then it's like, you have to consider everyone's needs. You have to like, when it's, when the band breaks up, we call it a breakup.
Yeah.
And like, it's like being in a relationship. Definitely.
Yeah. And I don't know if Kim Pine was a reference to anything, but we have Stephen Stills, and then we have young Neil, who by the end is just Neil.
From this point forward, you will be known as Neil.
And I was like, is Kim Pine somehow related to Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young?
I don't know.
And then I was just thinking, well, I mean, there's a lot of famous Kims out in the rock and roll world.
Yeah, Kim Gordon.
Kim Deal.
Maybe that's it. And Pine, I don't know. But she's great. I like her a lot. I like her deadpan kind of shittiness. I like when they were going to the party, Aubrey Plaza's character's party, and they're like,
man, this is gonna suck.
At least it'll give us something to complain about.
This gets into like how I was basically just writing down the movie instead of like taking notes on the movie.
I guess I kind of did too.
But they get to that party, and I'm like, oh, this is such like an early 20s party. Everyone's got plastic cups filled with their drinks.
Yep.
And it gets to, I didn't write the guy's name out, it was like Kamau?
Yeah, something like that.
And it's like he knows everybody.
But he's 25.
And I was just like, there is always like that one guy that knows everybody at one of these parties.
Yeah.
Who just goes there to like talk about how somebody's first album was better than their first album.
Right. And he comes back later at the
finale.
The big club, and like you can overhear him saying like, yeah, the movie's good, but the comic book was way better.
The comic book is better than the movie.
But only in the second version.
That's right. This movie really makes me feel like my 20s, or at least my early 20s. It just gives that feel of sort of like things maybe feeling like they're a big deal when they're kind of not.
Yeah, definitely.
In retrospect, now that from the grand viewpoint of 37 years old, I can look back and say, oh, honey, that was nothing. But, when you're that age, it can feel really big. And I think that's kind of why the battle scenes happen, because it's like when you play video games, sometimes a battle can feel really important and big, but it's pretty stupid once you stand outside it, Well,
also, I sort of like, I look back at short-term relationships that I had when I was like 19 and 20, and they seem to have a bigger impact than relationships of the same amount of time that I have later on in life. It's like when I dated someone a month when I was 18, it was like, oh my god, that was my whole world for a month. Now if I date someone for a month and it ends, I'm like, well, whatever. And I think this movie kind of reflects that, like, when you're young, these relationships are so big and so daunting, and then as they get on, they become less so.
Right.
And the movie does a good job, because at the beginning, it feels like an early 20s sort of situation. But by the end of it, it's like they've matured over the course of the movie. And I think the original comic took place over the course of several years.
Oh, okay.
Where this takes place, over a couple weeks, maybe.
A month or so.
And so I think in at least the source material, by the time they got to the other side of it, like they had actually matured because several years had passed. And which I think makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah.
Like in the grand scheme of storytelling, but like I don't know if the movie would have been as good if they had made it take place over several years.
Right. And I kind of struggled with that on my way, or while I was thinking about what I was going to say today, and I actually considered going out and reading the whole graphic novel series, but then I realized, we're not X-rated source material. We're called X-rated movies, so we're talking about the movies.
Talking about the movie.
Yeah, because they optioned this like after the first book was released.
Okay.
And like Edgar Wright was attached when the first book was released, I think.
And I mean, the movie went into production before the last book was finished too.
Right.
So the ending of the movie is different from the books themselves.
The Game of Thrones did.
Yeah. They GOT'd it before GOT.
Yeah. Well, I guess that we should say that GOT SP'd it.
Yeah. They SPV TW?
Absolutely. I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, most of my notes are just like things about this movie that I like.
Okay.
So, my biggest like revelation of this movie I've already revealed, which is that like, the fight scenes are like what video games feel like when they feel like it's more important than it actually is. Otherwise, it's just, fun stuff that I like.
Well, then can we reserve the rest of our hour to talking about how much I love Wallace?
Guess who's drunk?
One of my questions here is, Matt, do you relate to Wallace?
I don't relate to Wallace. I aspire to be Wallace. he is my life goal.
Uh-huh.
Not particularly attractive. He's got some charm and some wit to him, but he gets that hot guy with glasses. So basically,
that guy with glasses is hot. Yeah.
Sign me up.
Yeah, he seems to have no problems getting gentlemen.
And he has quite possibly my favorite line when he's telling Scott that you have to break up with Knives today, and then the dude with glasses walks out of the bathroom, even though Wallace has a boyfriend.
Yeah.
Hey, Jimmy. Double standard! I didn't make up the gay rule book. You got a problem with it? Stop. Take it up with Liberace's ghost.
I can't explain how beautiful a sentence that really is.
Yeah, it's great. I really love when he's shit-talking the band that performs before Sex Bomb from the balcony.
Yeah.
I like how their first song, they're like...
The song is called I Am So Sad. I am so very, very sad. Goes a little something like this. Thank you.
Not a race, guys!
Just like, ooh, good one. Yeah, but Wallace, I don't know, I guess I'm a little conflicted on Wallace, because I do like him as a character.
You don't know if you like him or love him? If you're in lesbians with him?
I said lesbians.
There's some times where I'm like, is he a good representation of gay people? I don't know, I can't tell.
He doesn't act gay. He is a little... What's the word?
Predatory?
Yeah.
Okay.
He just seems a little overly predatory with boys with glasses.
Well, he asks him, he says...
Hey, Jimmy. Do they rock or suck?
Which I don't know which one would be... If the subtext of that question is, are you gay or straight? I don't know which one would be the right answer. But it turns out he does get to make out with him. And more. Assumably.
Yeah.
So, good job, Wallace.
Yeah. But he doesn't die.
No, he doesn't. That's right.
Neither do... I mean, none of the gay characters die.
I guess. They turn into coins?
Yeah.
I don't know. The violence in this movie is kind of fun because there's no blood.
Yeah.
But, like, people are getting slammed through walls and stuff.
I was definitely thinking about that. I was like, presumably these people are dying at the end of these battles. But no one's really that sad or upset or...
Yeah. I mean, the rules are kind of out the window as soon as that first fight scene happens.
Mr. Pilgrim! It is I, Matthew Patel. Consider our fight begun!
It's like, oh, no, this movie is a fantasy.
Yeah.
You know, like...
He's shooting fireballs, he's got his hipster demon chicks behind him.
Yeah.
It's a musical for a short period there.
Yeah. And I think I read that was kind of what Edgar Wright was going for, was like he wanted this to be like a musical, but instead of people bursting into song, they burst into fight scenes. That's good. Which, that's what it feels like.
Accomplished.
Yeah, when those fight scenes start going on, they kind of come out of nowhere, and then it's all of a sudden, action sequence, you know?
And they seem to have a different set of rules.
Yeah, once they start, for sure.
Yeah.
Real fast, you're on record as not liking Chris Evans in a certain movie. How did you feel about Chris Evans in this role?
Well, he was fine here because he was just playing some brogue douchebag. Like, you know, obviously the part that he was born to play.
That's actually hilarious.
No, I had no problem with him on this one. But yes, the movie in question, where he's playing some, you know, the world's greatest space engineer. Yeah, I had a problem with that. But no, him playing...
A douchebag movie star?
Yeah. Idiot action movie star that has a skateboarding company. No, for some reason that didn't seem like too much of a stretch.
I want to talk about Ellen Wong a little bit.
Is that Knives?
Mm-hmm.
She's in Glow.
that's why I wanted to talk about it, because that was the reason I started watching it. I mean, like, your recommendation was part of it, but then also I was just looking up her because I liked her so much that was like, who is she? Like, because she plays a character that normally I hate, the, like, goofy girl, like, for some reason always just, like, makes me cringe. I just haven't really seen a girl do it right, except in this movie. I think she's actually really funny, and...
So you hate Zooey Deschanel's oeuvre?
Yeah.
Ouch,
there,
Zooey Deschanel.
Come on and defend it, Zoe. I just feel like she's an underrated, maybe, actress. Like, I feel like... I mean, I'm glad she's in Glow as Fortune Cookie. I want to see her do more. I want to see more of Ellen Wong.
Yeah, she was really good, because she really nails that, like, I'm cute and innocent, and then when the tables get turned, for some reason it didn't seem unreasonable that she's also vengeful and mean.
Yeah.
Like, that all seemed to play in just fine.
She's just she's a good actress who can play goofy but also play action well.
So I think I mentioned this at the beginning, but I think this movie does a really good job of showing sort of a complexity of romance, because the beginning of the movie we have Scott Pilgrim, who's in a real, like, just schoolhouse crush relationship.
Yeah.
They almost hold hands. You know, they hugged once. And it really has that sort of innocent romance to it. But then one night with Ramona Flowers, and, like, she's in her undies, and, you know, she changes her mind about sex, but the implication was that if sex was on the table... He just would have had sex after the one date. On the one hand, he has his storybook, sweet, naive romance. But on the other hand, is like, oh no, we have what romance is actually like, by and large.
Yeah, he and Knives' relationship, like, screams Rebound to me still. Like every other character is telling Scott.
Scott, I forbid you from hitting on Ramona, even if you haven't had a real girlfriend in over a year.
Hey, whoa. Scott's mourning period is officially over. He's totally dating a high schooler.
Dating a high schooler is the mourning period.
Just got a point.
I read that apparently the original ending of this was that Scott ends up with Knives. But for a couple reasons, which I can't remember, I only remember one was that, like, audiences weren't into it, but, like, they switched it and had him end up with Ramona. And watching it today, I was trying to think, like, I don't know, how would I feel if he ended up with Knives? And I actually kind of like this ending maybe a little more, because Knives is too cool for him. I like that they give her that line.
I'm too cool for you anyway.
And also it's cool because it's like, Ramona's kind of a broken character like Scott is. You know, she sort of starts off on this pedestal, but then it sort of, as the movie goes along, gets revealed that, like, no, she's just as lost as he is in a lot of ways. Or not fully formed as he is, you know?
Yeah. I mean, the way that it's at least presented in the movie is that Ramona matured young, but then also kind of got stunted young. Yeah, she started dating Matthew Patel. As common a name as Matthew is, you don't see it a lot in movies, so I took note of it. But, you know, it's not like she branched out or found, like, someone who was good for her emotionally or stable for her. Like, she dated hotshots and bigwigs and people who, you know, like the spotlight, you know, stuff like that.
Or situational ones where it's like, oh, we were the ones who hated the football team together, or things like that. Yeah. So it's not necessarily good relationships, just, like, convenient ones, kind of. Yeah.
I mean, I don't want to say that it, like, breaks her down, but it just shows her that she's not this goddess on high.
Right. And then also that she, like, can't help herself around G-Man. Played by Jason Schwartzman.
No one does smug, like, self-satisfied, like Jason Schwartzman.
Oh, Scott. No, we really should be thanking each other. I mean, if it wasn't for me, Ramona would never have been with you, but if it wasn't for you, she wouldn't have gotten back with me, so I guess it all shakes out, huh?
This is what made him so good in, like, Rushmore.
Yeah.
Was that he's just so happy with himself. And so pleased with himself. And that's what this role called for.
Oh, yeah. He's perfectly cast.
Yeah. Well, you were talking a couple weeks ago when we were talking about watching Valerian, how the casting director should have been, you know, taken behind the shed.
Yeah.
Like, this movie was cast perfectly.
Yeah, it really is.
Michael Cera as like the awkward early 20s, like that's what he is.
Yeah, and he's Canadian, so.
Oh, is he really?
I think so.
Okay. Mary Elizabeth Winstead has just that perfect sort of like, I'm cool, but I don't care that I'm cool aura to her. Mm-hmm. You got Jason Schwartzman as G-Man with his smug self-satisfaction.
Yeah. I love, oh shit, I didn't write her name down.
Yes, I can't remember her name, but...
You met her so many times.
Little Arrested Development reunion going on.
Yeah, she has the best lines.
Punched me in the boob! Oh, I'd love to postpone, darling, but I just cashed my last rain check.
What's that from?
My brain!
I was just a little bi-curious.
Well, honey, I'm a little bi-furious! Back off, has-been! Your BF's about to get F'd in the B!
Shit, those are good lines.
Yeah. She had real good lines.
Yeah. And I like that fight sequence, actually, too, quite a bit. The girl fight. It's a lot of fun.
Each fight... so one thing why it was also hard to take notes on this is because every scene had its own kind of character to it. Mm-hmm. Like its own unique little nuances, little touches. I mean, especially the fight sequence. There was no two fight sequences that were the same.
Yeah. And they're all kind of modeled off of video game fights.
Yeah, in one way or another. Or maybe exaggerated to one effect or another. But, yeah, just each fight had its own distinctive personality to it, which was nice. Mm-hmm. And I've heard you talk about the one with the Japanese twins.
Oh, yeah.
When the monsters, like, come out.
Oh, look it. Gives me goosebumps.
Well, I think you mentioned, like, that's how it feels when you're actually, like, playing in front of an audience.
Yeah, I can. When there's a crowd. So that's another one of the, being sequences in this movie that gives me goosebumps when it's that Battle of the Bands, Amp versus Amp competition, because it's like there's this weird, the Double Dragons come out, which is a video game reference, and then their green-eyed monster comes out, and it kind of looks like Donkey Kong.
Yeah.
And then that's what the battle is.
Yeah.
And they're playing my favorite song that Sex Bomb does, which is Threshold, and it's just like, I don't know, it gets me going every time. It's so good. And it's short, too. It's not a long fight sequence, but I don't know, it gets me really excited. I like it.
I mean, none of the fight sequences really overstay their welcome, I feel. Yeah. But, they're all pretty concise, and they just... And it also... The movie bucks, like, the trend of, like, action at the beginning, exposition, a little bit more action, a little bit more exposition, finale. Yeah. Like, there's usually that, like, sine wave of, like, the James Bond thing where you got your big stunt to open it with, you got plot, you got a little action in the middle to keep the audience interested, you got more plot, and then you have
the final...
Yeah. This, it, like, wavers. Like, you definitely have 6 battles because 2 of the X's are in one band together.
Yeah.
But it helps buck that trend of just action talk, finale.
Right.
This has that good mixture that works outside that framework.
It does have a different feel pacing-wise. I guess I didn't really think about that until you mentioned it now. And I kind of like that. It feels fresh to me rather than, like, odd. And
the dialogue is so snappy that when you're in the exposition, I feel that a lot of times it's just as entertaining as the fight sequences, Yeah. Scott reading an email is a hugely entertaining scene.
Dear Mr. Pilgrim, it has come to my attention that we will be fighting soon. My name is Matthew Patel, and blah, 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 blah. Fair warning. Mano a mano, 7 evil, blah, blah. This is... What? This is boring. Delete.
And he does, like, the Raimi trick of, like, making small little gestures seem huge. Like, when they're at the club, the first, like, Battle of the Bands thing, and everyone's, like, looking at each other, and, like, the camera, like, zooms out, and, like, there's the animation that, like, emphasizes the dramatic elements of it. Yeah. That's a classic Raimi move, but it really makes just, like, those small moments feel big. Yeah. It makes them look the way they feel when you're living them. You know,
I think that was like, I actually think that was intended in the source material too. I think that like that was kind of the idea, was like making small everyday things feel so much bigger and giving them this like.
Raimi loved his comic books.
Yeah, well, so, there you go.
You know, maybe he just drew it from that.
Yeah,
but yeah. So even just them, like the exposition parts of the movie are still hugely entertaining.
Absolutely.
Like there's really no scene that feels wasted.
Yeah.
Even the ones that aren't, you know, directed with a capital D, they still feel like they have like enough jokes or enough like banter that it pulls it through. Like when Scott finds out that bread makes you fat.
Bread makes you fat?
Yeah, or like when he's coming home from making out with Ramona, and then it's like a Seinfeld transition, and it's like, you know, we've got the audience laugh track going on.
Yeah.
And there's little punch-ups like that all throughout the movie. There's little video game sounds everywhere. And I don't know. Some people criticize this being like, this is for the MTV generation, not for other people. But it's like, I don't know. Fuck that. Like,
I mean, it does seem sort of generation specific. Like, I think you kind of have to know, or at least have a sensibility for a lot of these old classic video games.
Yeah, maybe.
And, you know, maybe it was just aimed at, you know, millennials. And, you know, we're not exactly a movie-going generation. I know you're not in that generation, but, you know, we're harder to get to the theater than other generations.
Yeah.
So, I mean, maybe that was one thing that contributed to it, was that, you know, it was targeted at us, but it's, you know, we'll just wait for it to watch on our phones.
Like, this is, like I said before, it's really hard for me to be objective about this movie because it's so targeted to me and just, like, hits every button for me. So it's really hard for me to not be like, why doesn't anybody not like this? I don't get it.
Yeah, because I mean, it basically just took how I felt during, like, I'm going to say ages 18 to 27 and made a movie about my feelings.
Yeah.
You know, or out of my feelings.
And it does this cool trick where it's like, now watching it 10 years past that point, I can still get those feels of that time, but I don't feel nostalgic or like regretful or any of these. Like, it just feels like fun. It kind of like makes them, like, I don't know, people are all like, oh, Stranger Things is amazing, it gets all the best stuff of the 80s, and I'm just like, I mean, it has its merits, but it's like, you can't just point to something 80s and be like, remember this?
Yeah.
Remember how this was the thing? And then, like, expect me to be interested in it, you know? You can't just reference things and then expect people to become nostalgic for it. Like, you have to emotionally get me invested. Otherwise, I don't care, you know?
Yeah.
And this movie manages to get me emotionally invested without relying on the nostalgia factor.
Yeah, definitely.
There's definitely a nostalgia factor, but it's not using it as a crutch, it's using it as embellishment.
Okay, so I think we've talked about all of Ramona's evil exes.
Mm-hmm.
Which one do you want to bang the most?
It's tough. I'm gonna go with Todd the vegan.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
that's what I was thinking.
I could do vegan food, and plays an instrument.
Brandon Ruth is pretty easy on the eyes.
Indeed, yeah. Not the smartest, though.
Definitely not. Not really worried about it.
But yeah, that's probably where I'd go.
I mean,
3 is the magic number.
Well, I was also going to say, part of me wants to date the Japanese twins.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah.
But they're not really given too much depth. Like, the music, like, that scene is pretty awesome.
Right.
But they don't have any speaking lines.
Yeah, we don't learn enough about them.
Jason Schwartzman's cute. Not cute enough to, like, out of the bunch.
Not that character either. Ugh.
So maybe it may have just, like, aged out of this, but I feel that when I was in early to mid 20s, everyone was vegan except for me.
Uh-huh.
And now I don't really feel like that's true. Like, when I go out to eat, like, rarely ever is there, like, someone who's hardcore vegan.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I still definitely know people who are vegan, vegetarian, But I felt like I was in the minority by not being one of those things in early mid-20s.
Yeah.
That the majority of the people that I knew were one of those things. So the battle with Todd and his vegan psychic powers, for me, like, that rings so specifically true to a specific point in my life. But I wonder if it does. Like, was that a fad? Like, was that sort of a, late 90s through the aughts fad? Per capita, is there not as many militant vegans as there used to be?
I imagine there still are. I think it's more of a comment on how people go through that phase a lot in their 20s.
Okay.
And, but no, I think there's definitely still some vegans out there.
I just remember there was, like, a certain period of time where but maybe it's also that, like, the market has changed, because I remember having to, like, pick out restaurants that had vegan options.
Yeah.
And maybe just every restaurant has vegan options now, and I don't have to think about it.
They do. I think they do more so now. So as someone who works in the service industry, trust me, there are vegans, and they'll let you know.
Being vegan just makes you better than most people.
Vegans do get touchy about it, though, and I'm sorry, I'm going to make fun of you, because it is a lifestyle choice.
Sure. Hey, we've had that thrown on us for decades,
yeah,
so...
you can eat otherwise, but no, I support vegan. I actually like a lot of vegan food.
We are getting to a point
some
where...
of my best friends are vegans.
I mean, we are getting to a point where some of those fake meats are pretty tasty.
Oh, yeah.
So...
Field Roast Sausages is a local company, and boy, do I love eating it. Let me tell you. Made here in Seattle since the 90s. Can you believe it? They've got celebration roast for fancy, celebrations if you want to have it for Thanksgiving or Christmas. Yeah.
Good to know.
You could chop up one of those Italian sausages, put it on a pizza. It's like it's sausage on a pizza.
Boy, I wouldn't have known if I hadn't listened to this podcast.
Yeah. I mean, if one of their marketing people wanted to reach out to us and ask us to market for them, do ads, I would gladly do so.
Well, right, because they meet our standards of quality and earth-friendly.
Anyway, thanks, Field Roast. You make life better. I feel dirty all of a sudden.
So the vegan fight also introduces the third Arrested Development alum. One of the vegan police is Thomas Jane.
That's right.
The homeless movie star in Arrested Development.
I just want my kids back.
There's also, what's her name? Who plays Brie... What's her name?
Larson?
Brie Larson is in this movie.
Yeah, I saw her name in the opening credits, and I was waiting for her to show up, and I couldn't see her anywhere.
She's the lead singer of the Clash of Demon Head band.
No!
She's Envy. Yeah.
She's Envy?
Yeah. She looks so young, doesn't she?
I was going to say, I couldn't tell by looking at her.
Yeah. And I think she's great in this, actually. I like her a lot.
Yeah, I like her a lot. I did not see Brie Larson. Academy Award winner Brie Larson.
Yeah. Apparently the song that they do was a song written by Metric, a Canadian band.
Oh, okay.
And they're supposed to be kind of modeled off of Metric.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
Because I was watching, I was like, the song's actually pretty good. And I can see how, it's a little polished, a little meant for mainstream. And I was thinking The Kills.
Oh, yeah.
But Metric, I think, actually makes more sense.
Yeah. And there's apparently the version of that song is the actual one with Emily Haines singing on the soundtrack.
Metric did, was it either Cosmopolis or Maps of the Stars, one of the Cronenberg movies, where Metric teamed up with Howard Shore, who does the score to all of Cronenberg's movies, essentially.
Cool. Those Canadians sticking together.
Yeah, they really do stick together. I wanted to keep track of how many editing tricks they did.
Yeah.
How many times, someone would walk into a room, the door would close, and they'd walk out half a second later wearing totally different clothes. Because it's so smooth. You don't see the cut.
Totally, yeah.
But obviously there had to have been a cut. Same with, Wallace face planting on the bed, and then it's suddenly daytime.
Yeah. When he goes to Ramona's house and spends the night, it just shows the house at night, and then, boom, it's daytime.
Yeah, there's just so many quick cuts that are just seamless.
You could say that this is a movie that's really made with an editor's eye.
You might be able to say that, yes. It's almost as if Edgar Wright is thinking about the editing process while he's making the movie.
It's a good observation, Matt.
Well, you know, I try and see a movie from all perspectives.
Real fast before we exit, I'm a big fan of Easter eggs in Edgar Wright movies. That's kind of one of his things. Stuff you may not notice first, second, third time viewing. All his movies reward repeated views. Mm-hmm. This one that popped out to me that I can't believe I've never noticed before is when he goes into the final fight scene, he puts on a Smashing Pumpkins shirt, which their logo was a heart that had SP on it. Scott Pilgrim. It's just like, duh, that's great. It's so small and simple. All the X's, like just before the battle would happen, there would be a shot with either a number or the number of X's that were coming up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so like just as they're climbing the stairs to go up to the castle to meet up with Chris Evans, there's like crosswalks and it has like X on one side, X on one, so it's like pedestrian X. Or like when they're going into the after party from the Clash of Demon Head show, the name of the club is 4, and there's a great big 4 that they're walking under. So, I mean, it's just like small things like that you may not catch right away are so much fun on repeated viewings to see. Anyway, I think this is probably my favorite Edgar Wright movie so thus far.
Yeah, I don't know if it's my favorite, but it's definitely the easiest to rewatch because it wasn't that long ago that I watched this movie.
Yeah. Did you enjoy watching it for
I did. Like, it's such an easy watch. There's so much going on. There's different things to pay attention to. It's like watching a long episode of one of your favorite television shows a little bit. Like, it's so fun and it's so snappy that repeating it doesn't bother me at all. Yeah. It's super easy to watch back to back almost.
We're big, auteurs on this podcast, but sometimes when you give somebody with real talent a lot of money, they can make something awesome.
I was out for drinks with a friend the other day.
Uh-huh.
Like, for work, he had to do a public presentation.
Okay.
And, nobody's favorite thing is to, like, speak publicly. But, sometimes you gotta do it.
Yeah.
And he's like, yeah, it was an hour-long talk that I had to lead. I was like, oh, God, like, in front of a crowd? I was like, I don't think I can talk about anything for an hour. And he goes, what are you talking about? You do it every week.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, yeah, but I'm not giving a presentation.
Yeah.
I was like, this also isn't public, but he's like, but you're releasing it to the public. Well, yeah, talking to a microphone's different than getting up in front of an audience.
Yeah, this definitely doesn't feel like anybody's listening. Well, Matt, what have we got in store for next week?
Well, next week is October 2nd in the year of our Lord 2017. And we have been blessed to have 5 Mondays in this October.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Whole hand's worth.
That's 5 episodes of X-Rated in 1 month.
Oh my God.
I'm gonna usher it in. October is officially Schlocktoberfest.
I'm scared, Matt.
So, next Monday, October the 2nd, we will be reviewing my favorite werewolf movie.
Okay.
Bad Moon with Mariel Hemingway.
Oh, okay.
From like 1997.
Interesting. All right.
I know that the mid-90s were not a high point in horror cinema, or some would argue cinema in general.
Mm-hmm.
And this might be an exception to that rule, or it might not be, depending on how you view things. But
if it's anything like Twixt,
it is considerably better than Twixt.
Okay.
I think you'll like it, though. At least on some level.
You ready to plug our junk?
Let's plug our junk. Like, rate, subscribe on iTunes.
Indeed, you can get there by website, by app, or by
train, bus.
Cyberlink? Yep.
I'm sure if you go to, like, the Apple campus, someone there will be able to help you do that.
Also, we're on Twitter, at X-Rated Movies.
Follow us on Facebook, at Rated X Movies.
We've also got email, x.rated.movies@gmail.com. You can send us suggestions for field roast recipes.
And come to our new website, fieldroast.com/X-Rated-Movies.
X-Rated Movies, brought to you by Field Roast Sausages. Has a nice ring to it, you gotta admit. Next week we're starting off Matt's horror movie Fantastico. We're still workshopping the title.
I was gonna say, movie marathon rolls off the tongue so easily.
With Bad Moon.
Bad Moon.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.